So last up in our discussion of dividing a polynomial by a binomial is going to be dealing with dividing a polynomial with missing terms. So in the previous videos, we looked at this long division, and I said as you place your terms in your quotient, make sure you line up kind of like terms and columns. And that's really, really important. It helps us just keep everything neat and organized. It helps when we combine like terms. It's a good thing to do, okay? And so what you're going to see here is we're going to have a dividend that's missing a term. So like as far as degree is concerned, it's missing a term. So, you might go from x squared to a constant and skip that linear term, that plain x term. Well, we don't want to just get rid of it. We still need a placeholder for it. So basically, once you figure out the degree of the polynomial, so the highest exponent, you need to make sure every other exponent and a constant is part of the dividend so that you have these placeholders. Okay, and they become very, very necessary. So to keep terms aligned, it is important to make sure the dividend is not missing any terms in descending order by degree. If a term is missing, you must add a placeholder term. So let me show you how to do that. So the last two examples will have missing terms, and we'll figure out how to fix that. So directions are the same, just find each quotient. And if you look here, we have x to the third plus 2x squared minus 3. What we're missing is a plain x term. So when we rewrite our dividend, we want to make sure, number one, it's in standard form, and number two, it's not missing a term in order of degree, okay? And if it is, we just put a placeholder there. So when I rewrite this as long division, I'm going to set up my long division. I'm going to have x squared plus, or wait, x to the third rather, plus 2x squared plus 0x. So I'm not changing the value of the polynomial. 0 times x is 0, which doesn't really technically show up, but we still need that placeholder. So we write it as 0x and then minus 3. That's my new dividend. And it's not really a new dividend. It's just a new format of the exact same thing. We haven't changed the value. And then our divisor is x minus 2. So now when we go to divide, everything's going to line up in columns beautifully. We always have to fill in those placeholders. So first step, I want to take the first term of the dividend and divide it by the first term of the divisor. So I have x to the third divided by x. Well, x to the third divided by x, that x in the denominators cancels one of the three in the numerator, leaving me with just x squared. So I want to make sure I line up that portion of the quotient with the squared column. So now I take x squared and I multiply it by my divisor. So I'm going to multiply that by x minus 2, which gives me x to the third minus 2x squared. But remember, we have to subtract this, okay? And this is the area you got to be the most careful. So in order to subtract that, I just want to basically distribute a -1 through it. So I'm going to take x to the third minus 2x squared, and I'm going to multiply it all by -1. And then I can combine that into my dividend. So -1 times x to the third is -x cubed. -1 times -2x squared is plus 2x squared. And when I combine x to the third minus x to the third is 0, 2x squared plus 2x squared is 4x squared. And then I just drop down the rest of my dividend. So then I have plus 0x minus 3. And now I repeat the whole process. So I take the first term of my dividend, which is 4x squared, and I divide it by the first term of my divisor, which is x. And when I do that, let's see, x squared divided by x is just x, and then I get a 4. So I get 4x, and then that goes up here. Now, 4x times my divisor becomes 4x squared minus 8x. And remember, we have to subtract this. So I just get -1 times 4x squared minus 8x. And let's see what happens there. -1 times 4x squared is -4x squared. -1 times -8x is plus 8x. The first term, when you do this simplifying or this combining like terms, it should always just cancel to become 0. And 4x minus 4x is 0. 0x plus 8x is 8x. And then drop down your -3. Okay, so now you can see why that 0 placeholder was necessary. If we didn't have it, we'd have to be like shoving that 8x in somewhere. So it just kind of keeps things neat and aligned. Okay, now we repeat this process one more time because we still have a remainder. And just notice, for this to be a true remainder, the degree in the remainder portion has to be less than the degree in the divisor. It's not less, they're the same. So we have to do one more division. So I take the first term in the new dividend, which is 8x, and I divide it by the first term of the divisor, which is x. X divided by x is 1. 8 times 1 is 8. So I put a plus 8 right here, and then I multiply that by the divisor, which is x minus 2. So that gives me 8x minus 16. But remember, we have to subtract this. So I basically just distribute a negative 1 through 8x minus 16, and then I combine that with the current dividend. So negative 1 times 8x is negative 8x. Negative 1 times negative 16 is plus 16. 8x minus 8x is 0. And negative 3 plus 16 is 13. So the final quotient is, well, we take the quotient from the long division, so x squared plus 4x plus 8. And then if there's a remainder, double check and make sure the degree of the remainder is less than the degree of the divisor, and it is. The degree of a constant is 0. The degree of our divisor is 1, so we're good now. This truly is a remainder. And all we want to do is go plus 13 over the divisor of x minus 2. And this is your final answer. Okay? All right, let's look at one more. Hold on, I need to pause and check something. Okay, let's go back to the worksheet. Okay, so for part B, we have 4x to the third plus 3x plus 5, and we're going to divide that by 2x minus 3. So again, we're missing a term in our dividend. Our dividend goes from the x to the third, so degree 3 all the way to degree 1. We're skipping that degree 2 term, so we need to make sure when we rewrite this for long division, we fill in that missing term. So this is going to become, for long division, 4x to the third plus 0x squared. So that's our placeholder. 0x squared is really just 0, so we're not changing the value of our polynomial. We're just giving ourselves a placeholder. And then we want plus 3x plus 5. And then we're going to divide that by 2x minus 3. Okay, so just like before, we start with the first term of the dividend, which is 4x to the third. We want to divide it by the first term of the divisor, which is 2x. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and then x to the third divided by x is x squared. So far we get 2x squared, so we want to line that up in that x squared column. Now I take 2x squared and I multiply it by my divisor. So I'm going to multiply this by 2x minus 3. That gives me 4x to the third minus 6x squared. But remember, we subtract, so we want to distribute a negative 1 through that before we try to combine it with our dividend. So we get 4x to the third minus 6x squared. So negative 1 times 4x to the third is negative 4x to the third. Negative 1 times negative 6x squared is plus 6x squared. We can now combine. 4x to the third minus 4x to the third is 0. 0x squared plus 6x squared is 6x squared. And then just bring down the rest of the dividend, which is 3x plus 5. And then you just repeat the process. So do you see how that 0 placeholder for the square term was kind of helpful? It gave us a column to add that 6x squared in. All right, now we take the first term of our dividend, our new dividend, which is 6x squared. We divide it by the first term of our divisor, which is 2x. 6 divided by 2 is 3. X squared divided by x is x. And then we multiply that. Well, first we put that up here, so that's 3x. And then we multiply that by our divisor. So that gives us 6x squared minus 9x. But don't forget, hopefully when I say don't forget, you're like, subtract. We have to subtract this. So to do that, we distribute a negative 1 before we go and combine it with our dividend. So negative 1 times 6x squared is negative 6x squared. Negative 1 times negative 9x is plus 9x. So 6x squared minus 6x squared is 0. And then 3x plus 9x is 12x. And then just drop down the next digit or the next piece of your dividend, okay? And then repeat that whole process. So we take the first term of our dividend, which is 12x, divided by the first term of our divisor. 12 divided by 2 is 6. X divided by x is just 1. So we're left with just plain old 6. Okay? And then I need to take that 6 and multiply it by the divisor. So let's see, that gives me 12x, just 12x, and then minus 18. But don't forget, we subtract. So I want to distribute a -1 through 12x minus 18 before I try to combine it with the dividend. And that's going to give us, let's see, -1 times 12x is -12x. -1 times -18 is plus 18. So let's see, 12x minus 12x is 0. 5 plus 18 is what, 23? So we do have a remainder, okay? So the final quotient is the quotient from the long division, so 2x squared plus 3x plus 6. And then because we do have a true remainder, we're going to go plus remainder, 23, over divisor 2x minus 3. And this is the final answer. Okay, so hopefully going through long division, I encourage you to do it kind of like I did. Do the long division in one column and do side work in a second column. It's easy to miss the tiniest little thing here, and then everything kind of falls apart after that. So take your time, be neat and organized, double check your steps, watch your signs. That's going to be a big thing here. Know that you can check your answer. You can take your quotient and multiply it by your divisor. If you have a remainder, it's not the most straightforward process, but it can still be done, okay? So do make sure you know how to divide a polynomial by a binomial. It could potentially come up when you get into a college algebra or a pre-calculus class, so some kind of college level math, okay?